Complete restoration of the Peugeot 405. Here is your car. Now from the onset, like we picked it up from home. So yeah, first of all we just did a cleanup just to make sure that at least it is dusted off and that it can be worked on without dust and cobwebs and things. So look at the interior and how it is coming along. So you can see, yeah, it cleaned up really nicely, like so. Because we also like working on a clean car, because that way it's easier. You can see what's going on when it's clean. At least if there's some breakages, disconnections, you can see them clearly. Yeah, the boot was also cleaned up. Everything that was in the boot is still in the boot. Things that Mzee had bought and things that he had replaced. I see he had worked on the brakes before, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, so this is how we got it clean so far. This door is still stuck, the rear right. We'll work on it. Driver's door is good. And the car is clean. Back to the engine bay as well. So the car was not running. First things first, like we had discussed, the first assignment was to look at the plugs, the spark plugs and the lead wires to be replaced, because the plugs were dead. Those plugs that they had put that long time ago. And then we go to the ignition system, the distributor here, and then we go to the fueling. So after that, the car could crank, but it wouldn't start, the engine wouldn't run. So that's where now I began looking at it. So far, we looked at the fueling system. The carburetor has been serviced. We opened it up and then cleaned up all the jets, as well as, the carburetor has very small jets in it that spray fuel into the intake. So cleaned the jets, cleaned up the entire carburetor, all the gunk that was sitting there with old petrol, the carbon, cleaned up. And then we go to the fuel lines now. So on these fuel lines, this is the fuel pump. This one normally has a mechanically driven fuel pump here off the camshaft inside here. So it doesn't have a pump at the back or from the tank. So this is the fuel pump. So the car was not getting fuel up here to the engine. So we put fuel in the tank, about 1,000 bob, roughly about 5 liters, no fuel is coming. So we thought maybe it's too low. So we added another 1,000, so about 10 liters, still no fuel coming up. So I went back to the tank just to check, because I did disconnect these pipes to just check whether I can suck fuel from the tank without using the pump. So I couldn't get fuel. I was only getting air coming out of, like sucking from a vacuum. There was no fuel being picked up. So I followed back these fuel lines back here as they go back to inside the car, and those two are the fuel lines. So went back inside the car, under the car, and then inside the tank. So there was a disconnection under the car where I think rodents had eaten it up. There's a plastic junction that was eaten up, it had a hole on it, so it wasn't picking fuel. And then later on, after I fixed that, I went back to the tank because I could still feel sucking air and not fuel. So I got back into the car just to look at how much fuel I have put in and why fuel is not coming in. So the fuel gauge is under this car. So the floater unit itself is under the car. So what we normally do is you undo these seats. You undo the back seat like so, and then after you undo it, you find where the fuel floater is sitting. So normally on these modern cars, this is where the fuel pump is located. And on these older cars, they had mechanical pumps, and then just back here is where your floater switch is, sort of a floating pin, a floater that moves up and down with the level of fuel to show you how much fuel is in the tank. So I got there. So this wiring is not for the pump because there's no pump at the back here. This wiring is for the fuel gauge sender unit that sends the information about the fuel level in the tank. So coming back here, I found out that this cover here, you unscrew it to open the sender unit, and then you screw it back to lock it in place. So I discovered that this sender unit, that cover was sort of halfway done. So sometimes when the seal, there's a seal under there, so when the seal is not sitting properly, you would find challenges with the fueling, because when it sucks air, it's more of has an airlock, so fuel will not be getting back. So at some point when there is good fuel in the tank, so the car will run because the pump can get to the fuel, the pickup tube can get to the fuel. But then with movements up and down, sideways, and then there is air in the system because the lock is not fully locked, so you'll find the car would be going off occasionally. And I would think that is how this car used to go off on its own after some time. So when those air getting in and then movement of fuel from one side to the other or up and down, the pickup tube wouldn't pick the fuel, and that's how the car used to go off. So back here, just to mention, these are some of the works that we will be doing. Look at that rust. So normally these Peugeots do rust a lot under the floor and things, so this will take a lot of welding, a lot of panel replacement and stuff, and the same thing under the car as well. So we fixed the fueling issue. We have still a lot of rust in the boot as well, if you can see over there, so quite a lot. So nearly the whole of the boot will have to be reworked for that job. So that's where we got. I would want to now take the battery, because we did that. We did the lead wires, did the plugs, did the carburetor service, and sort of just servicing, not repair, because nothing has been replaced in the carburetor as well. And then we'll also be taking this cardboard out and putting a good gasket on it. It has a carbon gasket rather than that cardboard. Iliwekwa box, so your box utolewa, because with time petrol eats into this, and then air will start leaking through here, and fuel also will start leaking through here. And then as you can see, the engine bay does not look as it was. We also did an engine wash, just to make sure that everything is looking nice and clean as we proceed. So I'll pick up the battery and then we shall continue with how the engine is running. Just to make sure that you can see, not that there were too many trials to start before installing the battery. So we have a new battery that we want to run it with, but definitely we now need a battery. I'll get in now and crank it. There you go. Neutral. Clutch out. You know, when you have an electric pump in the tank, you can prime the key on off for it to bring fuel. But for these mechanical pumps, you don't do that, but you just crank and then fuel will fill up. So it takes longer because it has to bring up the fuel. Alternatively, this is why you would find those old mechanics would have to suck some petrol and then put in the carburetor directly. There we go. Engine running, off. Start again. Okay. It has been about a week before we ran it again. There we go. You can listen to how smooth we are running now. Close that door. And off. And sounding nice actually. Sorry, it went off. Let's start again. There. And not smoking at all. Yeah, so there is where we are as of now. The engine is running, the car is able to move. But it starts on its own, smoothly, like so. Just wanted to rev it a bit from here. So yes, that is where we are. Just to mention, these tires, yeah, they've been sitting down for a long time, so they are not in the best position, really, in the best condition. Yeah, so we'll be looking at tires. So yes, there is a lot of body work that needs to be done. There is quite a good amount of rust. See on the bodywork, this is rusted. So normally with Peugeots, from this wheel arch, you will find this rust has gone much deeper. You can see that in there. This is because of just sitting, and then with the rain and so much water soaking in. Yeah, see that? All that is rust. So mechanically, I think a few bits to do in terms of just making sure the engine is running smoother than this actually it can. And then taking it out on the road, I felt like lacks power a bit, so that's something I can look into it. And then the brakes. So taking it out on the road, I could only get the rear right wheel locking up, and you know, this car doesn't have ABS, so only the rear right wheel was locking up, and the rest of the three do not have brakes. So ideally the car doesn't have brakes, so that is something I'll be looking at next, probably tomorrow in the course of the week, just to make sure that now it drives, goes and stops. Because right now, yes, the engine runs, the car can drive, but stopping is another issue, and unless you want to stop into someone. But then that is next course of action. The bonnet, I think it had been redone. All these marks are marks from the Nyundo guys. And then actually, if I can just undo the bonnet, you could also see that the bonnet, the filler and the rust that is in it, but this is just surface rust. That one can be brushed off, and then the entire body that's just sort of sanded down to the bare metal, and then the work can be done on it. Yeah, so at least the tires can hold some pressure just for testing here and there, but we'll need tires now, and then we will need to do the brakes, and then we'll need a new battery, and yeah, sure, I'll update you on how things go with it. Thank you. That's the far we are now. That is the car running. This is a small test for if you want to know whether your car is misfiring. So you look at that. You see that boop, 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 brrr, and then blowing out that pepper. That is a misfire being registered. So if there's no misfire, that pepper just needs to be blown away smoothly without this boop, 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 back and forth. Yeah, so there's still some misfire to sort on the car, but that is where we are, and that is how the project is coming along. Thank you. We'll update you again.